Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats, dragons of all ages. Seeing as 1 year from today Star Wars Episode 9 will drop into theaters, I have decided that I'm going to release one Star Wars related video every month leading up to the release. Why one a month, you may ask? Because I don't have that much free time. Today we will be talking about Star Wars The Force Awakens. Released in 2015, it was the first live-action Star Wars movie released in 10 years. And as such, everyone went crazy over it. And it got exceptionally well received. As for my thoughts on the film, well, since it's old and I actually for the most part liked it, I don't have a lot of criticisms of it. I thought the story was good, the characters were good, and I thought it was a decent start to the trilogy. However, that doesn't mean that there weren't a few things wrong with it. So let's break it down, shall we? One of the complaints the movie often receives is that it's too much like A New Hope, which I find is understandable, but I find easily forgivable. Well, it does have a very similar plot to A New Hope, but it does change enough things I think it stands well enough on its own. Something that a lot of people questioned was whether Rey was a Mary Sue character or not. And as of this installment, I didn't really think so. I think seeing as this is the start of a trilogy, and we'll see this character grow over the course of 3 movies, I thought Force Awakens did a good job with establishing Rey's character. Not to mention an exceptionally good performance by Daisy Ridley. As for where the Mary Sue stuff comes in, I personally think all the elements that would normally qualify her as a Mary Sue are easily explained. One thing everyone thought made her a bit of a Mary Sue was how quickly she grasped onto the concept of force powers and how to use them. This, I feel, is an easy explanation. She simply has more of a knowledge of the Force than Luke did when he started off. In A New Hope, Luke had never heard of the Jedi or the Sith or even the Force, and so everything was a new concept to him. Rey, on the other hand, has obviously some knowledge of the existence of the Force, and knows of the Jedi, or at the very least Luke, which would give at least some basic concept for her to work on. So when she's using the Jedi mind trick on James Bond, it could very well be that she had heard of a Jedi's ability to influence the weak-minded. Thus, she has a little more of a starting platform than Luke did when he started his training. Overall, I think Rey is a perfectly fine character for the starting off point of the trilogy. Now moving on to Trooper FN2187, or Finn. Overall, I wouldn't say Finn is a bad character by any means, but I wouldn't say he's a great character by any means. He's a stormtrooper who finds that he doesn't have the will to kill innocent people, and so helps Poe Dameron escape from the First Order. After a crash landing on Jakku, he meets Rey and BB-8, develops a crush on Rey, and thus sets off with her on a quest to escape from the First Order. I honestly don't really have too much to say about him. Kylo Ren is the new villain introduced in this movie, and his actor Adam Driver I personally think is the best out of all the new talent brought into this trilogy. In the scene where he and Han meet face to face on the bridge in Starkiller Base, I will admit that the inevitable event of Han's death didn't really surprise me, as the imagery and symbolism was blatantly waving death flags over his character's head. Although Adam Driver's performance was so convincing about how torn he was on the decision that I actually for a brief moment questioned whether he was actually going to kill Han or not. But then, of course, it came as no surprise when they actually went through with it. Now we'll get back to the Mary Sue bit with Rey I was talking about, with how she beat Kylo in the forest with a lightsaber. This, I'm pretty sure it was revealed in Last Jedi that he was clearly holding back because he wanted to take her on as an apprentice. Not to mention he'd been shot earlier by Chewbacca's Wookiee bowcaster, and they really establish how dangerous that thing is. So really, as of The Force Awakens, I thought Kylo was not the best, but at least a decent starting point for creating a great villain. I could bring up Snoke, but honestly, it's not worth getting into until we get to the Last Jedi review. And now we are on to my least favorite character, Poe Dameron. Alright, let me reword that. He's my least favorite in the second half of the movie. In the first half of the movie, I think he's perfectly fine. He's funny, a bit charismatic, and establishes himself as a decent character. At the halfway point is where I have an issue, because
he's supposed to be dead!
Yeah, weird.
Yeah, for those who aren't aware, in the first draft of the Force Awakens script, Poe Dameron was supposed to die. In fact, his death was so foreshadowed that in the concept art, his character's name is John Doe. Now, the reason they changed this is because Oscar Isaac was considering declining the role because he had apparently been cast in several other roles that involved seeming to be a prominent character and then dying in the first 5 minutes, and he didn't want to risk being typecast. Now, I myself am not an actor, but from what I know, this is a concern amongst actors who want to display their talent acting in a wide range of roles. So I hold nothing against Oscar Isaac himself for taking this stance. However, I do think that casting or whoever was in charge of this decision should have maybe considered just getting a different actor. The reason I say this is because Poe Dameron is marketed as a main character, but in reality, if you think about it, he's really just an over-glorified side character. He disappears for half the movie, and then almost every scene with him after that feels oddly disconnected from the main plot. And it's especially weird because he's supposed to be a main character, yet he and Rey never share one line of dialogue, even though they both have Finn and BB-8 as friends, and in one scene they're 10 feet apart from each other in the same room. And yes, I know that they were trying to wrap up the ending, but seriously? You couldn't share one line of dialogue? Just one? They only got around to actually meeting each other at the end of Last Jedi, which is just feels weird. I don't know. It's a very odd decision, in my opinion. And for those of you wondering,
And, well, how are they supposed to destroy the Starkiller base? As if Poe Dameron didn't fly in and blow it up.
well, I'm not entirely sure, but since Poe Dameron was supposed to be killed off, I imagine they had a plan before. So yeah, my impression of Poe Dameron, like him in the first half of the movie, don't like him in the second half of the movie, but I don't hold anything against Oscar Isaac for this decision. Now we'll get on to one of my own just personal issues with the movie, which is the ending. I don't dislike this ending, but I think there are some changes that I personally would have made that I think could have made it better. I don't know. I'll throw it out there and then I'll let you decide. Really, the point I would have started making changes was, admittedly, I wouldn't have brought back Poe Dameron. The next major change I would have done is not kill off Han Solo. Sort of about the halfway when I was watching this movie the first time, what I was hoping the ending was going to be was that they beat the First Order and destroy Starkiller Base, then Han, Chewbacca, Rey, BB-8, and Finn go off on the Falcon in search of the missing map pieces to Luke Skywalker. And then Episode 8 would have taken place maybe, I don't know, some as of yet indeterminate time later when they've retrieved all the pieces and are going to find Luke. And then their adventures between episodes 7 and 8 could have been written in expanded universe books that would have expanded on the characters' relationships with each other. And then in episode 8, I would have killed Han Solo. That way the impact of his death would weigh more on the characters because they've spent more time with him. Otherwise, other than those details, I probably would have kept it mostly the same. And I, for the most part, was fine with the ending of episode 7 since I was curious how it would lead into episode 8. And oh boy, do I have words to say about episode 8, but those can wait. Anyway guys, thank you once again for watching, and tune in next month where I will be talking about Star Wars Rogue One.